sure it's red there.
Red?
Yeah.
There, okay. All right, good evening. We're going to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. We'll start with number one, courtesy of the floor, public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on. Colonial Intermediate Unit 20, General Operating Budget discussion item. If you guys want to come to the table here.
Although these faces are familiar, Mr. DeFelice, Dr. DeFelice, will you introduce your team?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Silva. Frank DeFelice, Assistant Executive Director at Colonial Intermediate Unit 20. I'm here with Mrs. Casey Kinney to my right, Director of Special Education, and Mr. John Walsh, who is our Business Manager at IU 20. Thank you.
So I'll get started. Dr. Wolfel couldn't be with us tonight, but he did want me to read a statement on his behalf. Good evening to the Bethlehem Area School District Board, Administration, and Community. Thank you for having Colonial IU 20 at your board meeting. I'm sorry I was unable to be here tonight. I'm currently on a bus with several athletes and coaches heading to Special Olympics, state games in Somerset County. We were to depart Tuesday morning, however, due to the pending storm that will be arriving, we felt it would be better to leave this evening for safety of our athletes and coaches. He said you're in good hands with the three of us. Though I cannot be present in person, I did want to express my deepest gratitude to the Bethlehem Area School District for their unwavering support and meaningful partnerships. I sincerely appreciate the collaborative spirit between all of the school administrators and faculty that has defined our relationship, leading to the success of all the children we serve. I look forward to our ongoing collaboration and the great things we will achieve together in serving our children and families. So you have the slides? Okay. So briefly, our mission and vision at the IU is to develop and maintain positive relationships that support student growth, are responsive to stakeholders' crucial needs, and demonstrate effective results through services and programs for students. Our vision is a vibrant, vital, influential, and innovative child-centered organization serving children, families, and people who serve them wherever they might be and whatever they may need. Briefly with this slide, the budgets that we overlook are 262 million plus. 145 million of those dollars are IU generated budgets, and 117 million is for our medical trust known as EBTEP. We have 47 different budgets that we administer at the IU. The general operating budget, which we're here to present tonight, is 1.6% of the overall revenue of the IU. Base budget that supports this is the base budget that supports the administrative services needed to operate the IU, specifically the executive office and the business services, curriculum and professional learning, and educational technology. This budget does require local school district support and approval. Okay, the numbers. So for 24-25, after going through all the contractual salaries and benefits and whatnot, we came up with a 6.8% overall increase to the budget, or $271,000. The increase to the school district withholding to all our 13 school districts, which is the only mandated payment to the IU, is 0%. Increase to receipts other IU sources is also 0%. Basically, that number is the transfers that our other 40 plus budgets contribute to the general operating budget. The big cost drivers of the budget, obviously, are salaries. We're budgeting 3.3% based on the Act 93 agreement. And coincidentally, our medical increase, as recommended by our actuary, Conrad Siegel, was also 3.3%. So that's what I budgeted for that. This is a table of showing those figures over the last 5 years since 2019, 2020. The withholding has been an average of 1.1%. Receipts other IU sources is 1.3%. As you can see, the last 2 years, it was 0% in 22, 23. Last year, 2.5 and 0% this year. I'm trying to, when doing these budgets, to keep those two lines the same. I think it makes more sense to me. So that's why you're seeing those the last 3 years like that. This is a analysis of all the revenue that goes into the general operating budget. The biggest increase is the EPDEP transfer of $207,500. The second one is the revenue from interest, which is very conservative on that, $119,600. Last year, we brought in a little over $200,000. So we have a lot of long-term investments right now. So I am anticipating that number to be more generous than the 119 that I projected, but the 119 is going to get us where we need to be to meet our obligated expenses. As noted before, the 4 different areas of this budget are, I'm here, we're showing the changes in each of the areas. The biggest increase in expenses in HR at 8.5%, educational support services, 178,000 or 7.7%. And thirdly, the educational technology budget, 4.9%, $19,000. And finally, just wrapping it up again, $576,000 is the overall withholding to our 13 school districts. We're going with a 0% increase to our districts this year. And you can skip past this chart. This I kind of explained on the other one, but it kind of puts it into a different format. And again, as we noted, Harry, the cost to the Bethlehem School District is going to remain $143,000, no increase to that. And that's the finance part of the presentation.
All right, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll go over the services and highlights between the student services, resolve programs, and special education programs. As you can see here, the statewide system of support continues to increase from 233,000 to just shy of 450,000 from the 2018 to 23-24 school year. The 24-25 projected number is anticipated to increase as well. One note for the statewide system of supports and the grants that you see included there under the student services, that will be, those statewide system supports and grants are able to provide these services at a zero cost to our districts between those two things. The partnerships we have are over 100 plus between all of the universities that we have listed there and other programs and groups and community services. Next slide, please. Okay. As you see in the blue, this students served 22-23 school year. You can see it's a total of 1,974 Bethlehem area school districts served. Autistic support is our largest program served with an increase of 125 students just in the past 5 years, going from 443 to 568. So that is a really large jump. Next slide. For student services under related services, you can see here that speech and language, the students are continuing to kind of level off there. Those students are continuing to level up due to the increase in speech therapists that we are providing. OT services are continue to increase and grow. And overall, we're seeing about 1,000 more students since the 2018-2019 school year, totaling 6,263 students total that we service Bethlehem area school district in any of those areas between hearing, itinerant, OT, mobility, PT, speech language, and vision as well. This next slide is on early intervention services. You can see on the left-hand side that the total students served in the state budget allocated students consistently remains within the same of each other. Some of the highlights on the right-hand side, this is a very large number. 619 students will be transitioning to school age programs for the 24-25 school year. That's one of the largest numbers we've seen in any of the past years. EI, again, is a critical program for our students coming up that are very young into the school age programs. This is a program that we continually try to focus on to increase revenue and increase dollar amounts for our students to get services. For this slide, we just wanted to go over the special education services the students served. You can see all the numbers on the left-hand side that I reviewed in the past slides. However, the classroom-based services, autistic support elementary classrooms are the largest in Bethlehem Area School District, totaling 12 elementary, 4 middle, 3 high school. We also have multi-disabilities classrooms, hearing support classrooms, and district-wide services as well, audiology, brain steps, itinerant, and psychiatric evaluations. 1,360 students served. The one thing I did want to note with this slide was that as a former supervisor as well in at the IU20 before I became the director, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you and your teachers and your principals and your staff. They are truly amazing, and I've worked directly with them, and they are fantastic, and we service a lot of districts, and they are top notch. So thank you for that, and thank you for housing us in your buildings as well. Next slide, please. This is for our Resolve Behavioral Health. Students served within the 22-23 school year have intensive behavioral health services. It's 75 students, outpatient program 428, and then the school attendance improvement has gone up to 4,600. Classroom-based services in Resolve include therapeutic emotional support classrooms, partial hospitalization, and then 3 mental health workers are supporting Bethlehem Area School District emotional support classrooms. You can also see the district-wide services that we offer below. It's really important that we do note that mental health has increased significantly across all of the districts that we service, including Bethlehem, and we're very happy to be a part of Bethlehem's comprehensive system of supports and mental health services. Next slide, please. This is just a slide about our Colonial Academy. 425 Bethlehem Area School District students were served in the 22-23 school year. Some information about the programs: the Rewards program, which is increasing literacy; Panorama, which is helping to strengthen the student supports and services; Colonial Academy, building trades, community-based projects, that's increasing job skills of our students. We also participate there in the Skills USA competition. 3rd place finish in the building trades is Mitersall and Bangor School District. And AEDY as well was a successful maintenance of AEDY status after the tri-yearly audit in the fall of 2023. Okay, I'll turn it over to Dr. DeFelice.
Thank you. I want to echo Casey and tell you that I work with a lot of teachers, administrators in the Bethlehem School District, and it's very easy to call here and get a response in a timely manner, and it's a pleasure working with the Bethlehem School District. I do want to mention Mr. Walsh said that the general operating budget supports curriculum and professional learning, 100% accurate. Specifically, the internal support for our IU20 programs and services is led by Dr. Bozini, Michelle Bozini, and her team, Heather Heimer and Carrie Ramsey. I'm not going to go through everything here on the slide, but professional learning and development. Specifically, we have a new staff training program, getting a lot of great feedback from our staff, and also a career pathways program. A lot of our paraprofessionals are engaged in moving towards certification in the area of special education, and we've seen some great results. Dr. Bozini and her team also participate in monthly state level meetings, PD initiatives. For the region, they run curriculum directors meetings and principal meetings. And a lot of student activities that I'll mention a little bit later, but a lot of opportunities for children to be involved in some regional competition to go to the state level too. And we also have a career pathways program with Moravian College with the human resources specialization and Delaware Valley University for principal certification and a doctoral advanced degree. We have, under the direction of Dr. Candianis, we have, and I want to highlight under educational technology, the lending library, innovative resources and tools with complementary trainings, and exploring maker spaces, which I know the Bethlehem School District has taken advantage of these opportunities. Highlight the student activities, again, regional competitions, esports, junior tech leaders, and some great opportunities for students. Next, I want to highlight a couple things on this slide. Dr. Bozzini is the state lead in accelerated learning. Dr. Heimer serves as a STEM state lead in supporting schools. One new regional professional development that I believe Bethlehem participated in last year is the Literacy Symposium at DeSales University, where we had some opportunity for professional learning on structured literacy for administrators and teachers. And I believe at the summer administrative workshop, we had about 200 administrators come from all over the districts, Monroe and Northampton County. The next slide has to do with technology support services. And Dr. Kalinowski, I think the big note here is the importance of cybersecurity. Dr. Kalinowski is always looking to enhance your cybersecurity posture from any threats, ongoing vulnerability assessments, constantly scanning the services to see how things are going. And there's a state and local cybersecurity grant, which he just received. So I believe that's very important for the technology services. Some other consortium services available include opportunities for, we're going to upgrade CPE Tracker. That is a platform that uploads professional staff for their Act 45 hours, and then it goes right to the PDE and the PERMS site. And also there's opportunity for technology staff training, especially on like new servers. So there are a lot of opportunities going to be available in the near future. The last slide on my piece here is very important, and I'll tell you that we have great attendance at these meetings, and the Bethlehem School District is always a front runner in this area, school safety, very important. We had a training in August on school threat assessments, some tabletop exercises, and also a regional swatting summit that was held in January with IU21 with some leading experts in the field. We got some great next steps and takeaways for the school threat assessment teams. We have regional meetings, and we're going to host a training that's required for the school safety coordinator that's mandated by PDE in the state, and that will be held on March 7th at IU20. So we're doing a lot of work in the area of school safety monthly, and we're getting, like I said, great participation from, I believe it's Todd Rapture who's attends our meetings. So I'm going to turn it to Casey for the last slide.
Thank you, Dr. I know that Dr. DeFelice said that that slide was extremely important, but I feel that when we end on a slide with a student, especially a success story for a Bethlehem area school district student, that is, one of the most important reasons that we're all here, because we wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the students. It's all of us in this room, or the kiddos. So Liberty High School has one of our partial hospitalization programs there, and a Bethlehem area school district student was significantly struggling, came to the partial hospitalization program, which, if anybody does not know, is a very intensive program for students who are suffering with mental health, any type of emotional problems, delays, things like that. Very intensive treatment program, very hard to be able to be successfully discharged from. This student, after struggling with the pandemic and having those significant mental health issues, was able to be approached to be discharged, to have a success story of having a newfound confidence of being able to work in the classroom, communicate with his family, communicate with his parents, being able to attend meetings, being able to have extracurricular activities. He was successfully discharged back into the district and is doing absolutely amazing. So this is a wonderful success story and something that we wanted to share. That is just one of the many things that we do along with your district, and the support of all of your administrators, support of your staff in the building, and your principals, again, are just so welcoming to our programs and being able to help and support your students. And we appreciate all the continued support and everything that we have with Bethlehem. And that's how we'll end it. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Any questions? Dr. Silva, anything? No.
For coming out this evening. I know the general budget is a small piece, and it's mostly the work that you do with our student services and pupil services team. But I do know what happens related to the curriculum or related to all the services that you do provide. So the IU is an indispensable partner for the Bethlehem Area School District.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Ruth, if you want to come up with your team. This is the Northampton Community College General Operating Budget for 2024-2025. Dr. Ruth, if you just want to introduce your team. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, and thanks for letting us be here this evening. I'll introduce my team. Of course, this is our new, well, he's over a year old at our college now, but still new provost and vice president for academic and student affairs, Dr. Mark Singer, joins us. And our someone who's also been at the college for quite a while, but is now our new CFO, Jason Lawball. And then our liaison from the college to to the Bethlehem School District Board is Rob McGann, our Associate VP for Enrollment Management. So we're here tonight to talk about the college and come, of course, with a budget request. But before I start, I just want to say thank you to this board for your partnership, to Dr. Silva for the strong relationship that we have between Northampton Community College and your superintendent. Thanks for your partnership. I also want to thank you for sending us 4 fantastic board members who are actively engaged in the overall operations of college. Dr. Karen Beck-Pooley, thank you. Dr. Dean Donaher, Dr. Mary Sharp-Ross, and Chuck Staley, all are excellent, very engaged, attend our meetings, so thank you for sending them to us. All right, real quick, you're controlling for me? Somebody is? All right, thanks. So just a quick update about the college. Each year we serve nearly 30,000 students who come to learn at NCC, both through our credit programs and our community ed programs. Our enrollment numbers are doing well in the winter or in the fall. We were up 3%, winter up another %, and so far for spring, we're in the 5% range, which is really good, which will put us about 3% overall for the year, and we're really excited about that. Nearly 1 in 4 Northampton County high school students will somehow, in some way, and at some point reconnect and come back to Northampton Community College for one of our programs. And we remain the top college choice for in-county high school students who continue their education. Access and affordability is very important to us. We remain at best value. 98% of our students say that we are a great value. We are one of the lowest opportunities for students to attend higher education in the entire Commonwealth. So our tuition, we work to keep our tuition consistently among the lowest, but our quality and academic rigor high. One of my favorite statistics is a third one here. 96% of the recent graduates, when we poll them and say, what is your plans? 96% are either graduating and transferring, or graduating and working in their field of majors. So that's our success rate. And I think that's a fantastic statistic, and that's a tribute to our faculty and staff who are well connected and engaged with our students, and a focus on our students' success. Many of our programs have 100% job placement, and many of those students are employed before they even finish the program. So that, again, two fantastic statistics to talk about our success. If you look at the next slide, it talks about our affordability. Look at our tuition. That's annual, by the way, as compared to some of our four-year colleagues that can go in upwards of 60 up to 70,000, depending on private institutions. But as I said, we try to keep our costs low. And so if you add housing and dining, because we do have residence halls on campus, it brings it up to adds another 6,000 or 7,000 to it as well. Couple bragging points. Newsweek magazine ranked NCC as one of the top 2024 top online colleges, #1 among Pennsylvania community colleges, number 83 in the country. 3 of our online programs were named best among in the US, and that was criminal justice, communications, and accounting. And recently, through the Morning Call's Reader's Choice Awards, we were named the best college in the Lehigh Valley, tied with that other school in Bethlehem, Lehigh, I think it is, but no, we're a great company to be in, no doubt, as a Lehigh alum, I can say that. And we were awarded the 2024 top technical school and adult continuing ed provider among who's who and among businesses. So we're excited about that. Keeping in mind, one of the things we think is our key to student success is that we offer a comprehensive student experience. So we have clubs and organizations and leadership development, and student government, things that as a community college graduate myself, I didn't have that. I went to class and ate lunch in my car in between classes, but to have this kind of experience with a theater program, by the way, a really great summer theater program, and an athletics department, 7 NJCAA athletics, and we're adding in the fall, men and women's wrestling. So that's our new sports for the fall. And by the way, all of our athletic teams for the last 2 years, every sport in our athletic department has competed in postseason tournament play. So there are scholars on the field and in the court, but also in the classroom, and we're really proud of what they do. So much that we actually, for the 8th time, received the Champions of Character Award among our athletes, which means they're not just excelling well in the classroom and in the court or field, but they're also incredibly engaged in the community, performing community service and engaging with our neighborhood communities. And I mentioned the summer theater. There are some of the programs that we're highlighting this summer, big names like West Side Story, Mamma Mia, Fiddler on the Roof. It's the best bargain in town. It's like $20 for a show, right? So come and support our program. We'd love to have you. And then let's talk about Bethlehem Area School District. This is our profile of the students that you send to us. Now, some are directly right out of high school, or some may have taken some time and come back. But of the 10,000 credit students, 1,700 of them come from Bethlehem Area School District. You can see most of them are part-time, and a majority are female, and about 60% are students of color. So gives you a profile of the Bethlehem students that we have. And then we just recently had our winter commencement. We highlighted 3 graduates, and I wanted to share the students that you send to us and how they become a success story. First, Abby Thompson, hope you know her, dual enrollment student who actually received her associate degree 2 weeks ago and hasn't even graduated from high school yet. How cool is that, right? Isn't that incredible? So we're excited she's a Liberty High grad. Next slide is Isla Janeski. There's an example of one of our students who's doing exceptionally well on campus and in class, but really committed to children outside the classroom and within the community. And she works for homework clubs and Special Olympics, Big Brother, Big Sister. And she plans to continue and will work in our children's center that we have on campus, and will be pursuing her bachelor's degree as well. So we're excited for Isla. And last is Nylacia Hall. Nylacia was a recipient of our ESU Clear Path Scholarship. He's going to East Stroudsburg University upon completion, computer science major. When he entered us, it was during that COVID time. He lost his father during junior year of high school. There was a lot going on, and talked about his mental health challenges that he has, but he is resilient. He persevered and he made it, and he's so excited, and just one of our great success stories, very involved in student organizations throughout campus. So 3 of your fantastic students that you sent to us, we're really proud of, and we'll be making their name big in the world, and you'll hear about it. And I'm sure they're going to trace it back to NCC and Bethlehem Area School District. Now I'd like to pass it to our CFO, Jason Lawball, who will take you through and talk about dollars and cents.
All right, thank you, President Ruth. Good evening, everyone. Here for a sponsoring school district update. Next slide, please. Just a reminder on the PA Community College Act of 1963 set it up where your local sponsor supports a third, state a third, and then students a third. In PA, there's 3 models. Your local sponsor can be your school districts, as we are, they can be your county, or they can be the city, as in Philadelphia Community College. The act talks about capital funding as well. And then, of course, the local sponsors are the taxing agent for the community college to pay for that third percentage. Next slide. A little history here. Back in 1967 was the original Articles of Agreement that were signed. And then most recently in 2009 is when the addendum was signed that goes through 2056. All sponsoring school districts signed that extended addendum. Next slide. So how are the allocations determined? So for 23-24, it was about $7 million of budget support. We look at a 5-year average of students on an FTE level. And then we take the percentage share and do the math. What it comes out to on the right-hand side, you can look at our aggregate percent increase for our budget over the past 10 years, 1.8%. Next slide. Capital budget support is also appreciated. We're proud of the right slide in that circle where we're keeping everyone's capital funding the same, $175,000, and we've been that way since 2010. No increase again this year. Next slide. Okay, here's some information on our FTEs from all of our sponsoring school districts. Up in the top section, 3rd row in, you can see the 5-year average for Bethlehem School District at 1373. Still tailing off, but again, that's the 5-year average during the COVID term where we saw enrollment declines. Good news on the bottom slide in the 22-23 column, 1270 is the full-time FTEs for Bethlehem School District. And then as Dave pointed out, this current year has about a 3% increase as well. So that number is back on the upward trend, which we're happy to see. Overall, Bethlehem school districts make up around 36% of our sponsoring school district students. Next slide. Historical funding increase across all our sponsors. Again, 10-year average to see what Bethlehem looked like. 23-24 saw a 2.9% increase, but you can see over the 10-year spread, averages out to 1.6%. What I like to see is that blue column. Everybody is below the 3% average. We try to keep everything below indexes for your school districts and also below inflation rates over a 10-year period. Next slide. So how are we funded today? As I talked about, state appropriations are not at 33%, they're at 27%. School district represents 11% of our operating budget, and tuition and fees is 55%. Auxiliary enterprises such as dining, bookstore, and other things make up that other 7%. Expenses are in line with most other higher ed. Most of the expenses fall in that wage and benefit line. about 51% on the instruction, and then 11 or 12% on the instructional resources, physical plant, student services, and general admin make up the balance of that. At the bottom of the slide, you can see our total proposed increase across all of our school districts this year is $150,000. Again, no capital increase, and this equals out to a 2.12% increase over a 23-24 ask. Next slide. Tuition and fees. Bottom section highlighted by the blue is what we're looking to do for 24-25 tuition and fees. Much like how we request an even percentage from our school districts over a long period of time, we like to take that same steady approach to tuition and fees. So we're looking at the same increase, $8 per credit hour for in-county. Going next year, that'll put our total flat rate tuition fees at $27.75, very competitive. Next slide. Here's how we stack up. Always like to look at our other community colleges in the state of Pennsylvania to see how our tuition is. On a per credit hour basis, I have 2 years laid out for you here, 22-23 and 23-24. We're in that next to last position, right above CCAC or Allegheny Community College, but as you can see, well below a lot of our other schools that reside in Pennsylvania. Again, like President Ruth talked about, we like to keep that balance between low cost and high quality, and we've been able to do that through this steady approach. Next slide. Okay, before I go on to the proposed budget, any questions on that front section? All right, thank you. 24-25 proposed operating budget. On the left-hand side, it can show where we're at for 23-24. In the current fiscal year, we're around $73 million on revenue and also on expenses. Sponsoring school district support in total is just shy of $7 million. For 24-25, again, we're looking to increase that sponsoring districts by just over 2% or $150,000. The first draft of our proposed budget for 24-25 has come in as a balanced budget. So we don't look to make any significant swings up or down over the next 4 months before we get an approved budget. A lot of that has to do with our enrollment increases last year and then also this year. Next slide. And then our capital budget, a little over 8 million for each year. Pretty similar year to year comparison here, but again, that 175 is the same dollar amount that we're continuing with going into the 24-25 year. Next slide. Okay, the request from Bethlehem Area School District is an increase of around $37,000, 1.46%. Represents $2.6 million for 24-25. And again, that kind of ties directly, that 36% number, ties directly to the 5-year average of FTE students coming from the school district itself. And again, if you roll all those up, it's around $150,000 total request amongst all 8 supporting school districts. Next slide. All right. Any questions on the budget or the ask for next fiscal year? Again, I thank you and appreciate the time you've given us tonight and your support.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And again, thanks for your partnership and support.
Dr. Ruth mentioned it earlier when he said that the Bethlehem Area School District graduates make up a large part of the enrollment. 30%, over 30% of Freedom and Liberty graduates, not 30% of the kids who end up going to college, but 30% of the kids that walk across the stage either go right into Northampton or at some point go into Northampton Community College's program. So to say that it is a destination of our students and that Northampton Community College has always been welcoming. I can only speak for the last 13 years, and I know Dr. Leeson and I have worked a lot with your faculty and your administration to smooth that path for students who we know are getting a good education at Northampton. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fastenal.
Question before you leave, and I don't expect an answer right now, but we've been talking a lot about Bethlehem VOTEC and an expansion project there and looking at building out programs. And we've heard a lot about, well, maybe Northampton is duplicating services or maybe there's some kind of crossover. And if you know it, you can answer it, but can you talk about programs in career and tech ed and things like that that would be available for high school students to do enrollment? Are there any? if you don't have it, you can filter it back through Karen and she can give it to us.
No, actually, all of our programs are available through dual enrollment. So in terms of duplication, yeah, I mean, we have welding and we have auto tech, and we have those programs, and we will offer dual enrollment. But if they go to Bavitz and they get those credits, when they come to us, we'll do credit for prior learning, so they don't have to take welding 101 over again. So they'll end up getting the college, because so someone said, well, why don't they just come directly to us, because then they'll get the college credit. Whereas they just go to Bavitz, they'll just get a VOTech credit. But when they end up coming to us from Bavitz, they get the college credit as well. So
Okay.
we do not want to compete with our colleagues at Bavitz. We have a strong partnership. We meet with them regularly to talk about, it was interesting because we were like, what can we do to funnel students from Bavitz directly to the college? But what's happening is they're getting such a great experience. They're getting scooped right up into industry. So now we're having to market to industry saying, send your employees to us for upskilling and trade. So we meet with them regularly. He's part of the Superintendent Advisory Council that I sit on with your superintendent. And I would say the partnership is strong, and we don't want to compete. There is duplication, but it's not competitive.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was, but we'd heard that from some other districts. Those programs at Northampton, is enrollment good? Are those waiting lists? Are there openings?
Yes, yes, and
Okay.
yes, but seriously,
Yeah.
we wanted to grow our enrollment. This is my second year as president, and I noticed when you come on campus, you know where we have liberal arts degrees in math and science and nursing and STEM, but you never saw anything about welding, electrical, HVAC, CAD, funeral services, only 2 in the state, 50 in the country, and we have one. And we have residence halls, so you can stay there and be from out of city, out of county, out of state to come learn here. We didn't market those programs, and so we began doing that. And I really believe that part of it, Rob's here, he can agree or disagree, hopefully agree, that because of the marketing that we put into the efforts we put into marketing those trades programs, that's part of our enrollment success, because people can come to us, as we say, come here, live here, learn here, and thrive. And they can come to the college and get an associate degree and transfer, or they can come and get a career. And we have a welding student that started last year, did his welding program, graduated with starting salary with $90,000. So
Yeah.
Not bad, right? For a 2-year degree with a welding certificate.
Yeah.
And I joke and say, if this president thing doesn't work out, I'll be enrolling in the welding program.
Got a lot less stress. And then lastly, thank you for all that you do in your team for students in Bethlehem. It's been a great asset to have in the college. And I'm amazed every year when I see the budget. And I think school districts pay 10%, but control your entire board of trustees, and you have to operate under, 15 different districts or whatever it is. And people coming from all walks of life, and you still manage to do it, because board members can tend to be crazy sometimes. And
Luckily, not the ones we have, but it's people say, well, how is it that the group that provides the smallest amount of your budget manages your college? And that wasn't the way it was set up. It was a
Sure.
third. But the reality, that's why we built residence halls. That's why we have a foundation, because we know we can't come to you and say, we're going to ask for a 28% increase. We know that you can't do that. We don't want to ask the taxpayers to do that. So by having residence halls and having students from out of county and out of state who pay a premium to come, it offsets the students who are living in district, and we can offer them a discount that way.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Mark has a
Yeah,
comment.
sorry, if I could just add one thing to that, which is that one nice thing about having the board members representing the districts here is that it really allows us to focus much more on local needs. And that's where we spend a lot of our time, just trying to figure out where the ball's going to be, if you will. What's the economy looking like around here? And we get that directly from our board members, and that's been the best thing about the makeup. But thank you for acknowledging that nonetheless.
I think we have 2 more questions, Ms. Patrick.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for highlighting Abby Thompson. I have been privileged to know her since she was in 2nd grade. She is an extraordinary young lady and a wonderful student. And I just wanted to convey too how proud she was of her accomplishment graduating with her associates from your school. So thank you very much for making that available.
And
to
I
her.
let her know how proud we were of her and her accomplishments.
She's
So,
a great kid.
She is absolutely a great kid.
Thank you.
Thanks for sending her to or having her be convinced to come to us, you know.
Thanks for taking her.
A
She'll also
great
be-
dual enrollment story, you know. Yeah,
Very much
sorry.
so.
She'll also be part of the Liberty High School team that beats Easton tomorrow night at the PP&L Center as far as, but yeah, she's a really special kid.
Dr. White, yeah.
Yes, I wanted to go back to the possible competition between Babbitts and NCC. And I just want to highlight that there are so many factors that go into where a student can find the program. And if you go to welding, welding classes at Babbitts are offered perhaps at different times that the welding classes that offered at NCC. So I just want to affirm that competition doesn't necessarily mean, well, they have it over here, so we don't have to worry about that here. It doesn't work that way for the student schedules. And if we're really talking about serving the students, we have to provide the opportunities where they are, as well as to support and keep a mindful eye on enrollment and sharing. But I think the question that is coming from the expansion is the space itself. Especially as Babbitts is looking to advance some programming, you know, with what's the one mechanic, automated mechanic? No. Something like that.
Yes.
But it's a whole new systems that many of our companies around here are using. And so this is, you know, it's kind of not just doing the basic, I mean, I don't want to say basic in a perfunctory way. I mean, $90,000 for a welding job straight out of the program is not something to sneeze at. It's a matter of really understanding need from where the jobs are, where the jobs are going. And it's all of that tied together with all of this mess of opportunities. So I'm really glad to hear that you're working so closely with Babbitt's administration on really thinking forward and thinking about students' needs where they are.
We actually, so we have a machining program, and that's a very expensive, lots of machines and equipment. And rather than ask the state for more money to build a new building and buy the machinery, we talked with Babbitts, we talked with CIT, and you know, they educate students from 7 to 2:30. So we go in there at 3:30 and we do evening and weekend, and we don't have to ask for more money or more resources. And for a small lease agreement, we can educate 2 more cohorts plus the one that's already going. So, you know, and so it's a perfect relationship. We're doing the same thing in our Monroe campus as well, our Pocono campus.
Can I ask that moving forward, we hear more of those types of sharing? Because I think with when we're talking about possible competition, it'd be nice to say, we're very mindful of it. And just not now, but just moving.
No,
forward.
but we're going to start that in the fall. So we'll come back with some success stories of that partnership
Fantastic.
and how that's worked.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love what you said, because it's not, I mean, you have this, we have this, and it's not competition, it's opportunity. And that's, our students are looking for different opportunities, and in the long run, the outcomes are the same. So thank you. Good.
Dr. Beck Pulley.
Just to add to that, one of the great things that story highlighted too is the strategic use of space, and particularly as we're trying to make sure there's enough space to accommodate increasing numbers of students who want access to these kinds of programs. The fact that the collaboration isn't just, all right, so now we're not going head to head, we're maximizing the programming we can do. We're also thinking really strategically about the spaces that are available. And so if a space is currently not being utilized, well, who can swoop in at what time of day? That's really also very helpful as part of that collaboration, because I know as Babbitts is thinking, you know, we're trying to make sure there's enough space for this stuff. Yes, it's going to involve new space that doesn't exist yet, but it's also nice to know that we're maximizing the space that we've got. So just thank you.
I'll just leave it that we also have non-degree programs for people wanting to get careers. And I know our VP for workforce development has gone to several districts and talked about those. The college isn't for you, okay, but still a career, you're looking for a career. So come and you'll get college credit, but they're not in a degree program, but the certificate program that could be stackable. And then when you get picked up by an employer, they'll pay for you to finish your degree in a lot of cases. So we have that as well. So thank you. It's been I love the dialogue. It's great.
All right. Any Final questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 3.01, year in review revenue projections. Harry. Or Dr. Sol, I'm not sure.
Yep, Mr. Aristikizian, our CFO, has been busy collecting, organizing, collating, and now presenting our financial information for our district. As you know, no school district operates in just 1 year. We operate actually out of 3 years, settling up for last year, doing the work this year, and preparing for next year. So collecting that information, giving an accurate picture of what it looks like, and planning for the future is keeping a lot of different balls in the air at the same time. But Mr. Aristikizian has done a good job at making that presentation. He'll walk us through it today with some revenue projections.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. I want to echo what Dr. Silva just said. You know, at any given time, we're really working in 3 different years. And talking to somebody, I might sound crazy, but sometimes, what year are you in, right? Are you talking about the current year? Are we talking about budget for next year? Where are we? So this year, we took a little bit of a different approach. We decided that we're going to develop some budget templates to help our staff, department heads, the school district leaders, the different buildings, in terms of managing, where are we realistically? What do we manage? What are we talking about in terms of current year versus past year? Give some historical dialogue and move it forward. So we've been doing that and working with them since November. In January, we had our first budget retreat, at least since I've been here, with our cabinet. And we talked through some of our priorities, some of the things that we're seeing on our end. And as we prepare for the March meeting, this is kind of an insight into some of the things that we've talked through at that meeting. So if we go to the next slide, Jamie. This is sort of the end of our last year as we pick up the remaining 2 years. We heard from our auditors last month, and this is just a glimpse of our audited financials. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you could see that overall we had 2% higher revenue than what we had budgeted for. And you can see that there's a little bit of a deficit, if you will, from the state side, and the federal picks it up. But what's glaring at me is the local revenue is up by almost $9 million. So what happened with the local revenue that we didn't anticipate as we went into budget season? If you go to the next slide, we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive. And you can see the tax revenue as a whole, you know, current, interim, and delinquent, a little bit higher on the real estate tax for current, which means that the delinquents aren't going to be as high. So a little bit of an offsetting. What's glaring on this slide is the interest income. So investment income, we had thought at that point was $85,000. What actually happened is just over $5 million of interest. I think it's safe to say that nobody really projected interest rates to go up as fast as they had, nor did they really project that it would stay up as high as it has for as long as it has. So you're seeing that roll over from, you know, kind of post-pandemic, but going into 22, 23. And even this year, we're seeing the interest revenue continues to be up. So keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the presentation. But you had $8 million surplus, $5 million of that is really coming from interest income. If you go into the state subsidy slides, you can see that the ridership had a little bit of an impact in terms of our non-pub transportation subsidy. You can see a little bit of a difference in terms of the other state revenue, but all of that was really offset by our pandemic level spending in terms of the ESSER grant. So, you know, while you see some variances, I don't think they're overly material. So what I'm going to keep focusing on is that local revenue and specifically the interest income.
Can I stop?
Sure.
We don't have this in board docs. Can we put this in slideshow so the numbers are bigger?
Sure. Jamie?
Thank you.
So we're going to start again.
Just hit the right arrow button. There you go.
Yeah, this is good. Unless you want to go back to the other slides.
No,
Oh, okay.
I just want to see going forward. Sorry.
So this is just a snapshot of our expenses. We talked about the revenue, which is a big factor. You look at the expenses, you can see the salaries were just a little under budget, but then the benefits were over budget. I won't bore you with all the details, but go into the total expenditure slide. You can see our actuals came in at 321 million versus 329. That's an $8 million variance, and you might say, hey, what happened there? I broke that out because that 8 million actually consists of our emergency fund, albeit the contingencies. And then the transfer to capital reserve, which we didn't have to spend, partially because there was extra dollars available, partially because we were doing other construction projects. So timing wise, that was an opportunity to transfer in. You take those two line items out, you can see that we were pretty much right on par with what we had budgeted. So the actual budget without the contingencies was 322 million. We came in at 321.15% of variance. You know, that's really good budgeting. So from looking at the overall salary and expense wise, you're seeing some big numbers. Keep in mind, you know, $8 million on a $320 million budget is not, it's a big number, but it's not a big percentage. And in terms of managing your revenue and expense, you can see the local revenue was the big piece of it. And expense wise, we came in right as we projected. So what does that all mean? Here's some changes in our overall fund balance. The unassigned is the one that you really want to focus on. You can see that went from almost 21 million to 14. That 14 million means that we have that in our unrestricted account, if you will. We can spend it as we please. Just know that it's our safety net. At the same time, we have an assigned fund balance. 7 million of that was used to balance this current year budget. So that came out of the unassigned, moved over to the assigned, and now we have an earmark for using this current year expenses. The committed balance is there because that is the balance that we have for capital projects as we move forward. And then you have the other restricted of $14 million. That consists primarily of our capital reserve account. There's some inventories in there, but overall that 14 million is the unassigned balance that we continue to work off of. All the others are earmarked for some other purpose. So again, you're seeing big numbers, but the unassigned is the one that really matters for PDE purposes. As we move towards some of the assumptions we made for this year and how that's coming together, we're about halfway through the year. So our real estate tax revenue, if you will, we're sort of done collecting. We're moving into delinquents. That's our biggest revenue line item, by the way. You can see the real estate revenue is coming in around 99% year to date. That does not include any of the delinquent revenues, but that does include some of the pilots, some of the other programs that we're running, some of the interims. So all in all, pretty good shape halfway through the year. Local sources altogether is 92% of revenue. Keep in mind, we still have some work to do in terms of the Act 511 taxes. So you're a couple of quarters of collections. We're in a pretty good space. When we approved the budget in terms of the state side, we made some assumptions. One of which was, well, we didn't have a good budget from the governor's side. The state budget wasn't passed yet. We went off the proposal and we said, we'll do 85% of BEF. Well, the good news is when all was said and done, we had a little bit more revenue. So that while we budgeted 51 million, we're estimated to get about 52 million. On the special ed side of the house, we did the same assumption. And unfortunately, the budget of 9.9 is a little bit too high. Our estimated funding is going to be around 9.4. You net those two out, you're talking about a $300,000 difference we can expect at the end of the year. We continue to monitor the subsidies in terms of ridership. We're continuing to monitor the employee reimbursements. So I think we're in decent shape when we look at the state side of the house, and we were fortunate enough not to overestimate some of the things that may have been coming our way. Going to the next slide, you can see that some of the federal dollars were offset. Closing out the ESSER money, we didn't budget for anything, but that's a timing issue in terms of the reimbursements. Same thing with the other ARP. So all in, halfway through the year, we're about 75%, just under 72% of where we anticipated to be in terms of revenue as a whole. Looking on the expense side, year to date, halfway through the year, and I'm just going to skip right to the bottom. Halfway through the year, we're about halfway through the expenses. So 72% of revenue, 50% of expenses halfway through the year. All in, I think we're in pretty decent shape as we aim to close out the rest of the year. Unless there's some emergencies or some incident that we haven't planned for, it's safe to say we're going to finish the year a fairly strong financial position. Going back to the governor's budget. In December, we had sort of a part two of what was passed. Next slide, Jamie. So these are some of the funding opportunities that were announced, more so on the competitive award side. I didn't want to duplicate these slides, so these are also going to be the similar programs to what's passed in this budget. But we had the mental health grant. That was 286,000 that we had anticipated to be in the budget. For a little while, we thought we weren't actually going to get that. And then we did get it, but the timing's off. So that's money that we're going to have to work through in terms of spending and it's $100 million, 90 million goes to the school districts. Our allocation, when we do all the math and the formula, is going to be that 286. I think we budgeted 289, so not overall material difference. There's an additional 50 million that came out, 45 million to the school districts, 5 million to PCCD, again, $50 million, 45,000 going to BASD. And then the targeted safety grant, which is 21 million, or just about 6 million allocated to the school districts. And it's really going to be awarded based on the greatest need related to safety and keeping order. Competitive award, we're going to apply for it, but what that comes out to and whether we award it is yet to be determined. Some things that we didn't necessarily know about or budget for is the competitive awards related to facility improvements. They're somewhat similar. One is meant for environmental repairs. So examples were lead in the water, asbestos, mold, those kind of items. The other one is meant for roof repairs, heating, AC boilers, projects that we haven't necessarily started yet, but we have on the books. So if we are successful in applying for these, there's a local match component. And then there's project minimums and maximums. The good news is you can get awarded up to $10 million, sorry. The bad news is you have to put a 50% match in order to get that full amount. So it's based on what we have planning for the future and projects that'll help offset some of the costs that we're doing even over the summer. So these are two awards that we're going to compete for. Again, whether we get the amounts or what the amounts look like is all to be determined. Any questions on anything we covered so far before we go into current? Okay. So going into the current, some of the things that we're considering has to do with the governor's budget proposal. Again, state aid, federal awards, state grants, things that have been announced, environmental factors, which is really the interest on investments that we continue to focus on. And then other big controllable items are real estate assessed values and collection rates. In terms of the governor's budget, right on the heels of the court case, I don't want to dwell on this, but the initial proposal right out of the gate is $1.1 billion. That includes 200 million that goes through the formula that we know, and then there's the first year adequacy investment of $872 million. From what I've read, it mirrors pretty closely to what the majority report has said in terms of the formulas. So how that'll end up will be really interesting to see. But I want to bank on that full 1.1 billion at this point in time. Special ed, there's a $50 million increase proposed, somewhat lower than what had been anticipated, but that's the starting point. And something new and exciting is the charter, cyber charter reform. That establishes a statewide cyber charter tuition for all regular ed students, gen ed, I guess I should say. And the proposed rate is $8,000 per student per year. Keep in mind, this is for the gen ed population, does not necessarily include any of the special ed rates, but I wouldn't be surprised if the special ed rates at some point became part of the dialogue as this thing gets worked through.
Anything close to that is a significant improvement for the Bethlehem area school district.
Yeah. Please.
I just want to make sure that I understand this correctly because I'm a little dim on the numbers. That $8,000 per student is coming from the state. So that means that, no, it's from the district.
Right. So we calculate our tuition rates on an annual basis based on our budget.
Right.
And so our current tuition rates, which is in a couple of slides, for regular ed students is $14,520.
Well, that's the number I wanted. Thank you so
Instead of
much.
paying that,
Yeah.
we would pay $8,000.
Thank you.
Sure. And then there's a proposal for 30 million increase in pre-K accounts, which for us would be about
Nothing, I was just complaining.
So a lot of the grants that we just talked through are actually proposed again. The safety and school security grants, $50 million, is the same exact one we just talked through. Mental health support, $100 million, same as the grant we just talked through. Environmental repairs, there's actually an increase of 125 million compared to what is just approved in December. So there'll be some crossover, which means that the opportunity to apply for those will be larger, more money available. What we get and how we get is going to be a competitive awards. And there's a continuation of the free breakfast and lunch programs for all reduced price students.
So Harry, as a general rule, if we got it last year, we're likely to get it this year plus whatever increase.
Yes, so essentially that's the baseline for success, whether you'll get the full 10 million plus that's proposed in terms of the governor's budget, more or less is all things that we're gonna mull through as we go through the March workshop. We'll make some assumptions, we'll continue to follow through in terms of what we think it's gonna be a realistic expectation. And whatever we think we have the best guess, we'll continue to refine that until we get to our June meeting at the end. But all in non-competitive awards, what that means is there's upwards of $10 million in potential new funding, which again is great news. And from the proposal, it's going to be another 5 years of continuing until we get to what was set forth by Funding Commission. Looking through the charter school reform, again, this is right out of the budget proposal, but the 24-25 budget establishes a statewide cyber tuition rate, $8,000 per student per year, and will better align tuition with the actual cost of providing online education. Our existing gen ed tuition rate is $14,520. Our special ed tuition is $32,039. So if we were able to get any kind of a fixed rate, even if that was $10,000, you can see where the savings will continue to add up. So while not a direct revenue, it is expenses that could be earmarked for something different. I'm hopeful and maybe perhaps a little optimistic that special ed will be part of that discussion. But to my knowledge, nothing's been announced, so it's yet to be determined.
I heard in a briefing from PASA that they were thinking of a multi-tiered system for special ed tuition rate reimbursement. So the assumption would be if the charter school is providing the low incidence supports, they would get the tier 1 expense, the close to the 8,000. But if the charter school is providing tier 2, more costly, they would then petition to the state of Pennsylvania that would say, yep, that student really is more expensive, and then they would draw that from the district, not the automatic pay first and see if the services are there later.
Yeah, so if we used 8,000 as our baseline, that's going to be just over $2.5 million of potential savings for the district. If you look at the special ed tuition and there's any additional change, that 10 million additional funding plus this, it could really be significant in terms of offsetting some of the mandated expenses we have. I'm sorry for the dark slide. I actually was able to get this from our investment firm. But what I wanted to show here is just kind of where the projected differences are in terms of district-wide investments. So we talked about how that was the big driver in terms of last year's audited financials, how that's helping us in the current year. Well, what is the projections for upcoming years? And so this is just the projections moving forward. You can see, or you can't really see, but in March, the rate is supposed to be a 0.25% difference. Our projected rate in terms of what the Fed's guidelines is 5.5%. What you're seeing in terms of the effective rate is 5.3. If you were to go into the May meeting, they're saying, well, instead of 5.3, you're going to see a 0.25% decrease, so it'll be roughly 5%. Following that chart all the way down, essentially the projections from Bloomberg are a 0.25% decrease every quarter, every time that the Fed meets. So when all is said and done in January, the projection is there'll be 6 rate cuts, and the rate will be, at least in terms of the target rate, somewhere around 3.8%. So there's an opportunity for our investment income to potentially go a lot lower than what we've been used to, and this is something we're going to continue to keep a close eye on, not only because of the investment income that comes our way, but because we also will need to go out for some kind of capacity of debt as we build our new Fountain Hill Elementary and talk to our floater rate notes. And then this is just a snapshot of our local taxes. So what I've tried to show here is that our overall collection rate, which is about the 4th column or so in the middle, hovers right around 97%. Obviously, the better we do in terms of collecting our current taxes, the lower it's going to be on the delinquent side of the house. So that current tax collection model, again, is right around 97%. When you take into account all the collections, including the delinquent collections, we're hovering right around 99%. So overall, an excellent job of collections. And as well as we are collecting, you can see that our revenue in terms of collections is somewhat flat, right? 182, 185, 183. Not necessarily the biggest growth factor. So what's causing some of that? And so we looked at some of the market values, and you can see the market values are jumping pretty significantly. At the same time, the assessed valuation is not so much. So as a percentage of assessed to market, just a couple of short years ago, we were at 44%. As of 22, we're at 37%. And, you know, once the market values come out for 23, I would anticipate another reduction of assessed to market. So assessed values continue to rise, but they're not necessarily keeping up with what the market values are doing on that side. So again, things that we'll evaluate as we move forward towards budget season. So what are we looking forward to in our next meeting in March as we go through our district priorities and sort of unveil our preliminary budget? Well, on the bright side, we have a lot of revenue growth opportunities. We have the competitive grants we talked through. We have the increase in BEF, anywhere between 2 to 10 million. And we have potential value of $1 million, which gives us a little bit of leverage if that's the direction we do go to. At the same time, we're projecting some increased expenses in our mandated costs. So special ed, somewhere between $4 to $6 million. Our cost of services and medical is going to be in the range of $1 to $3 million. Our overall fixed debt payments without any changes is going to go up by $1 million. If we put in some interest calculations for wraparound loans, that's another $1 million there. And our initial charter school tuition rates have us going another $5 million. So we put all this together and ultimately we're going to come up with a preliminary budget and some revenue projections and some models to show different scenarios as we move into budget season or further into budget season in March. Lastly, this is just where we are in the process. So we'll come back in March 11th and make sure that we cover the district priorities and some of the things that we're thinking through. And then March 25th is our budget workshop where we'll go over the preliminary budget in a lot more detail, including both the revenue drivers and some of the cost drivers. Any questions? I know it was pretty quick, but we told 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Aristakezian because one of our goals this year was to bring a little bit more clarity and a lot more organization to our financial information, whether it's how we keep track of it on a monthly basis or how we share it with principals or department leaders so that they can manage their budgets in real time and have a good grasp of where they are financially. So I want to congratulate Harry and his team. I think we've taken some big steps in being able to know, we know what we know in real time, which is a good position to be in. Obviously, we'll always start the school year or the budget process with a hole, and there will be. But the good news is this year, where in previous years, the revenue side was a little bit tighter and you really couldn't bank on larger collections or larger appropriations from the state, it looks like the revenue side is definitely in play this year. So again, you know, we'll have to manage things. We've had our budget summit internally and the department leaders know what they, in BASD language, is put on the shelf for a while if we have to close the gap. And then as the revenues come in or the financial position becomes clearer, the board will have choices as far as what can come back in, at what rate you'd want to increase any millage. We do have some expensive inflation has been inflation and that affects the school district. We have collective bargaining agreements that have increases in them. We have construction projects, whether it's Fountain Hill Elementary or the vocational technical school. So there's some driving on the spending side to perhaps match some of that better news and the increases on the revenue side. So bigger fluctuations and bigger numbers this year, sort of like tonight's snowstorm, big fluctuation and different numbers that you can make it a little harder to predict at any one moment. But overall, I'm very confident in that we're headed into a pretty good budget year.
Any questions?
I thought that this was a really good presentation, especially for those who will be watching this and those who are listening, just to see all the revenue sources it takes to make this run. You know, when we're out and about, oftentimes we hear from our constituents, what's happening with our tax dollars and, why does it cost so much? But you know, I think it's a really good case to know that this is what it takes, one, to run a school district efficiently, but then two, to know that it's, you know, there are a lot of factors at play, and just to hear the advocacy, how the advocacy of our representatives and local persons and of folks on this board to say, hey, you know, from a state level, we got to get things right. So hopefully we'll see those things pay off in the near future. But very good work, Mr. Casey, or Mr. Casey, and thank you.
Person that is on the job this year that hasn't been in previous years that's making a big difference, and that's Mary Kowalczyk in grants. Working under Dr. Leeson and working with Mr. Fontanez in the equity office, the amount of competitive grants, the amount of quality grant writing, the amount of input that she's getting. I know she just sent out all these barcodes or QR codes to get input on our Title I funding and all of our federal funds. She's on it. And there's much more of a strategy related to getting revenue through grant sources than we've ever had before.
Yeah, this is what, Dr. White?
Oh, it's okay. It's more like I'm doing this publicly so that I can hold myself accountable to the learning that I have to do in this realm. I mean, I've been on this board for 2 years and I still feel overwhelmed with understanding all of the bits and the parts. So are these slides going to be made available to us? Okay. And what I'm trying to do in these slides is match up what's going on with the articles that we read from PSBA and, you know, just the news things. So this is a lot to untangle. How you all manage to not lose your mind is just bonkers to me, but there's a lot to absorb as we move forward. And is this going to be okay for me to just continue asking without burdening your time? I mean, there's going to be some what about, you know, tell me what this is again. And I just want to make sure that we can keep our communication lines open, because this scares me. It always scares me. I mean, I rely on the wisdom of my colleagues, but I still need to know more. Okay. Okay, I'll try to digest it. Thank you.
These are the meetings for those type of conversations and those questions as we structure it. So feel free. We've done this before, so we know how the system works. Budgets basically come down to a couple of decisions. How much do you want to increase revenue, if at all? What programs do you want to expand or contract? And how large do you want your fund balance to be, or how much smaller? Really, the whole budget is just the answer to those three questions. So if you're looking for sort of like an overarching strategy for a district of our size budget development, those are the three levers that we'll be pulling. The data inside each one of those can get pretty specific, as you saw Harry give it. But overall, it comes down to those decisions at the board level.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ristakazian. That was an excellent primer getting into budget season. Next one, 3.02, BSAD Authority meeting update. Mr. Ristakazian, are you taking care of this? I don't see anyone here from the authority, so.
No, it's actually.
Where's Scott?
What we meant.
There's an attachment, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Board
there's an
docs is
attachment.
really slow right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the attachment is what we discussed at our authority meeting.
Okay.
So we have an annual authority meeting where we talk through the floating rate notes. I don't know if you all have the attachment up or not, but I can see Mike does.
Yeah.
So when we get the attachment up eventually, you could see on page 3. Yeah, there you go.
It's just,
Yeah, board docs is not really working right now.
Well, on page 3 of the attachment when you go home, there's a nice chart. It's filled with lots and lots of numbers. But what we're looking for is the dotted lines that show the floating rate notes to the tune of almost $100 million. That is managed by the BASD authority. What you're seeing on the left side of those is what is managed by BASD, the school district. One of the things that I wanted to highlight, which is on page 4, is those floating rate notes are actually due for mandatory call date in November, which means 3 months prior to that, we can continue to work through and potentially refinance or restructure or exterminate some of those debt.
If you'll check your email, I just sent it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So as we work through, the interest rates, if you will, and some of the projections moving forward, on the one side, because of the interest rates and the long-term rates as a whole, some of these swaps are actually in the money. We had a similar presentation from Mr. Shearer when he came in a few months back. And you can see the Series A, for example, has a current market value of $12,000. Just discusses some of the history of the projects and what's been going on, that's never had any sense of being in the money, if you will. So that's an opportunity for us to say, okay, if there's essentially an option to perhaps refund into a more fixed rate option, what can we do? So
For those on the board who might not remember those conversations for years, we had carried the debt of the swaps in our portfolio, and terminating them was just too expensive. I mean, if we would have to have invested a lot of general operating budget to be able to terminate those swaps. Well, not only did high interest rates create more interest income for the Bethlehem Area School District, but it also created a high interest environment that made the swaps a little bit easier to terminate. So that's good news. Now, it's now flipped over in our favor. Instead of being a cost, it's what, $12,000 bucks. Okay, so it's not a dramatic, but at least it's not where it has always been.
But it makes it actually a lot more predictable. And one of the things that you want in terms of managing a budget this side is some predictability around what is our expenses for the next year? Are we really looking at interest rates going up, down? What does that do? Because these are all floating rates tied to the market. And so, the three main options that we have is remarket all three and potentially go back into some kind of a floating rate note and continue to work through status quo, if you will. Some of the benefits is, well, you got an overall cost that's a lot lower, but at the same time, you got a lot less predictability. There we go. Page 5, Jamie. In terms of other options, well, we can go into, maybe perhaps refund one and fix the others. Or perhaps we do some kind of a hybrid method where we say, we'll do either or some of both. The goal is to make it the most efficient we can, have overall predictability and maximize our leverage without additional burden on the district. So while the committee meets typically once a year, we have several more meetings planned at the bottom of that page. So the authority will meet again in June, which is technically the 90-day period beforehand, talk through what the rates are, discuss some of the options and see if we continue to remain in the money, and with a goal of really refinancing in November. At some point when we make those decisions, we'll be coming back in here with PFM to talk through the options and answer any of the real financing questions we may have. But ultimately, Jamie, go to the slide before. What we're hoping for is the rates to continue to remain favorable to the district, where we have an opportunity to just a little bit lower, where we have an opportunity to refinance one, if not two, of these swaps. And it'll be efficient and put us in a position where we can manage our debt. So that's the intent of the discussion. That's sort of what we talked through as an update.
And just to clarify, the authority will make a recommendation to us, and we have to, as the obligor, we're the obligor on this, so, right? Or guarantor.
I think we're the guarantor, so they would have to do the first vote and agree on that, and then we would have to commit our tax authority to them. I'm not really sure how the resolution process works, but they would have to be in first before you guys, before the Bethlehem Area Board would vote.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that? All right, moving on to agenda items for February 26, 2024, 4.01 and 4.02. We heard the presentations. Any questions on those items? Moving on to 4.03, Plan Con J. This is Nichman. Mr. Riskazian found some money from the state that's well overdue.
Well, I wouldn't say I found it. We were notified that there's some outstanding Plan Con dollars out there, and we need to move forward with the claim process. And ultimately, I asked more details, and then I was forwarded this letter, so PD didn't know that I was in the position because I'm new. But there's money from 2014 that was actually committed by the board back in 2020 for the Nichman project. And this 2014 payment happened to be in cash, so we didn't have a lease number or anything associated with that. And so the state was able to confirm that this was in fact approved. You can move forward and submit the application. But by the way, part of that approval means you have to move forward and make sure that this is all noted as part of the school board meeting minutes. So we've attached a letter that came through from the Plain Con PDE section with all the lease numbers and the dates. So our $3.1 million payment that happened in 2014, we are eligible for a reimbursement of 15%, which means we'll get about $190,000 from funds that were previously spent in 2014. There's additional tweaks in terms of the estimate versus permanent rates, but financially, they're not really going to make a material difference to what we're doing with the existing loans. So we just have to put it in the minutes and it's already approved.
Harry, when you find money, take credit, okay? All right, 4.0, any questions on that? All right, 4.04 auditing services. We have to hire a new our auditor, re-up.
Yeah, we're just looking to continue the relationship and the partnership that's been built with Gorman and Associates. I find them extremely helpful coming into the district as a sort of a new into my role. They've done a great job with us and we'd like to extend that relationship for another 3 years.
Any questions on that?
I don't know if you could remind us or Dr. Silva or even Mr. Fascinetto, what is our process for when we look to receive those bids and compare cost for auditors and such?
Well, it's a professional service, so it doesn't have to be bid to the lowest bidder. We've used Gorman and Associates this was probably our 15th year. They came on board the same year I did or the year before. So as long as we're satisfied, similar to the agreement with Kings Fry, we don't have to go out for bid. I think it's more important that we get a qualified school district auditor that has a reputation for not being afraid to say you're doing something wrong and making the district look bad. And Gorman has never been afraid to do that, especially in the early years. And there's not a ton of firms out there, at least locally, that do high quality school district auditing. So, you know, we could find somebody from southeastern PA or the Philly area that might drive and charge a little more. But I think Gorman's one of those groups that if we're happy with the product they're providing, we don't necessarily have an obligation to go out. Because I don't know that an auditor is a place we want to save costs.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that's good to know that that is the process, and more importantly, they provide a great service, and the costs for their service are well within lines of what we would expect to pay. So
Absolutely.
that's great. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Schenk.
Just wanted to add to that, that I've been on the audit committee now, I think 3 or 4 years. I don't know, a while. And I've always been very impressed with them and the time and attention they've taken in those audit committee meetings to make sure that we understand. And to Mike's point, they point out what we're doing right, but they also point out where we can do better.
All right, anybody else for comment on auditing? Moving on to 4.05, this is the collection company, Credit Tech. We discussed this a few weeks ago. Mr. Riscasi, you want to go through the proposal here?
Yeah, we actually went out to get proposals from 3 different companies. CCA, which is Central Credit Audit, and 2 others, Transworld System Incorporated and Asset Investigations. Based on the review that we did, CCA came out on top. Subsequent to the work that we were doing, we discovered, oh wait, CCA was actually merging with the company Credit Tech, which happens to be owned by Berkheimer. So then our agreement went with Credit Tech, which is owned by Berkheimer. And the good news is the initial proposal was 30%. And Berkheimer, because of our relationship with them, was able to lower that to 25% for recovered amounts. So we'd like to move forward with Credit Tech and the agreement and specifically around the teacher's debt.
Mr. Casey, this came up at our Babbitt's meeting the other night, and maybe you could reach out to your counterpart over there, because they had a question about this as part of their negotiation with the faculty over there about putting it in for the tuition. I know Dr. White and I said, oh, we just had this discussion, so.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Just to share some information about what you've learned in the process.
Sure.
Thank you. Any questions on 4.05? All right, 4.06, the lease of the farmland down there.
Yeah, we'd like to extend our annual renewal, except we're proposing a 3-year renewal, possibly longer, depending on the wishes of the board. We essentially do this every year from what I understand. And when we go out, we say, here's an annual lease and let's renew it again. And we kind of continue with the agenda item. We're hoping to do this on a 3-year lease and move that lease forward with the same fixed payments, but there's a contingency on the lease that should something happen with the property, we have a clause where we can get out. At the same time, the tenant's rights are protected. We did talk to the owners of the land, and they're absolutely agreeable to this. And so if you guys are okay with the 3-year lease, a longer term option, if you will, we'd like to move that forward and not bring it up every year.
What does that allow the leasing?
Actually, he was thrilled when I suggested that, because he would be able to plant more accordingly and do his fertilization and the tillage and all this other farmer things that would help him overall. And for $2,600 a year, he was ecstatic.
Mr. Ristakazi and I discussed this the other day, and I suggested, because of some of the moving parts on that property, that we have an option in case we have to do something with it, that to terminate the lease.
Yeah, and that's been incorporated based
right.
on the work from King's Park.
All right, any questions on that? All right, 4.07, the donation from the First Presbyterian Church. This is, we're gonna do some helping with Dunnigan.
Yeah, this came about as a result of our presentation about a month or so back. We've had a lot of community members reach out and say, hey, what can we do? How can we help? First Presbyterian seemed to really get ahead of it. So they reached out to Frank, our business manager, and really worked through how can we help? What are the things that we can do? And ultimately, can we make anonymous donations as long as we report back? And naturally, we're agreeable. The only caveat is they want to help the Donegan Elementary School students specifically. So it'll be somewhat restricted to those accounts, but whatever donations we collect will go a long way towards our bad debt.
Sounds like a good program. Any questions on that? All right, 4.08, our annual student Chromebook swap out.
That's pretty much it. It's our annual swap out. And the cost is roughly $1.3 million, or just under that.
Any questions on that? All right, 4.09, authorization to expend 2024, 2025 budget funds for and submit for E-rate reimbursement.
Yeah, I believe this is also an annual item that we move forward, just not specifically for fiber optics. It's an E-rate application. And there's a potential savings of, I can't add them real quick, but about 130,000.
Any questions on that? 4.10, grant application, PA School Breakfast Program expansion.
Well, we're looking to take advantage, as Dr. Silva said earlier, of some competitive grants that are out there. There's an opportunity where we can expand our, Jamie, just one thing behind.
It's board docs. Board docs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
it's-
slow. It didn't get a copy today.
Okay. Well, here's an opportunity for us to expand our breakfast programs at no cost to us. So we're looking to expand that in Brockville and Northeast, I believe.
Any questions on that one? All right, and then it's already graduation thinking here. 4.11, graduation ceremonies at Stabler.
Our annual agreement with Stabler Arena for graduation.
All right. There we go. Any questions on that? Oh, Mrs. Patrick.
Somewhat related, just a reminder to all board members, if you have not gotten your cap and gown, please make sure you reach out to Mrs. Clymer.
Mine from last year. All right, moving on to courtesy of the floor for public comment. Mr. Antalix.
Okay, you don't want to hear, you don't really don't want to hear me. That's better. Who is Credit Tech replacing? Are they replacing anybody? Who was collecting before the company that's collecting delinquent school tax?
So this is a separate item. Portnoy is who we use for delinquent property taxes. This is to
Oh, we still have Portnoy.
yeah, this is a separate
Well, I
item.
was hoping that Credit Tech was replacing them because
No, this is a separate issue.
Portnoy has a history, which I reminded you of, but you still went with them.
Well aware, thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, moving on, number 6.1, board members, open forum. I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
Second.
We going into.
I was gonna say, maybe you should lift your computer up with the, being slow.
Thank you, Mrs. Patrick. We're ready to go. Yep.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 12th, 2024 Human Resource Committee meeting. They have to feel welcome. First up, courtesy of the floor for any agenda items. Seeing no members of the public, will proceed. Number 2, discussion items. We have 2.01 Board Policy 620, Fund Balance, second reading.
Yes, good evening and welcome. I do not come with any fancy presentations this evening. Basically, they're informational only with all 3 policies. These are just a renew. I have not received any information from any board member on any of the policies for any changes or suggestions.
Wonderful, thank you. So this applies to Board Policy 620, Fund Balance, second reading, 2.02 Board Policy 322, Gifts, second reading, 2.03 Board Policy 642, Jury Duty, second reading. 342, I'm sorry, my eyeballs. Okay, my eyeballs. Any questions or comments on these 3? All right, then we will be seeing these on the 26th at our board meeting. Okay, Dr. Burrs, any information items?
No information items this evening. I will be coming to the executive or during executive session in 2 weeks with some ideas that I have already talked to Mrs. Patrick about.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so then next up, we have agenda items for the February 26th, 2024 regular board meeting. We've already talked about 4.01, Board Policy 620, 4.02, Board Policy 322, 4.03, Board Policy 342. These would all be their third and final readings. No issues with those. So next up would be 4.04, Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania Agreement.
Yes, the agreement that is attached is a draft. Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania is actually Bloomsburg with the consolidation of some of the PASHE schools. They now are titled Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania. This is in response to two of our staff members who are doing a graduate program. The draft that was provided has been sent to our legal counsel. They marked it up. It was sent back to the Commonwealth Legal Counsel, and we were going back and forth. So if everything is resolved by the end of this week, a new version will be placed on the board agenda for approval, but I will give you a heads up ahead of time with the changes.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, and you'll be seeing that in 2 weeks. Courtesy of the floor for any items? Seeing none. Open forum. Any board members wish to speak on any item? Mr. Allozy.
Just a quick announcement. I'll do this now instead of at the 26th. Well, actually, it'll make more sense to do it now. Dr. Wandalyn Enix, retired BASD teacher, noted educational professional and professor, and one of the earliest African Americans hired to teach in our district, will be giving a lecture on the Great Migrations and how that affected not only the Black populace, but the landscape of Bethlehem. It will be on Saturday, February 24th at 12:30 p.m. And there's information out on Facebook and such if you have those social medias. But I just it'll be at the St. John AME Zion Church in South Bethlehem.
Thank you. Last week I attended the Pete&C conference, Pennsylvania Educational Technology something conference. But I did want to say that while I was there, not related to this, our very own district did a presentation on our immersion room over at Freedom, and I was not able to attend, but other people did, and I just heard raving from everybody who attended and how impressed they were and how incredible it was. So I just wanted to say great job to our team that presented that, for not only presenting it, but taking the time to put in the proposal and have it be accepted. It was very, very well received, and our district got some great accolades from it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dr. White.
Just wanted to shout out to our music department with Frank Allen Frank, and Mike Moran, who hosted the Pennsylvania Music Educators Association District Orchestra at Northeast Middle School. They did a fantastic job. I just am so impressed with the amount of extra that our music teachers and all of our teachers give. It's not just clock in and clock out. It's actually sharing their expertise and their time to host a festival like this is no small feat. I get to host it next year, and they set a really high bar. The best part of it that they set that I will never be able to beat is the food service. So anyway, shout out. It was just a fantastic weekend, and the students that I had spoken to from other schools really enjoyed it.
We had 7 musicians in the PMEA District 10 Orchestra, playing a range of different instruments. And if you closed your eyes during the performance, you would have swore you were at the Kimmel Center listening to the Philadelphia Orchestra. Well, maybe someone with an unrefined ear like myself would think that I was at the Kimmel. but it was the best music I've ever heard on a school stage as far as an orchestra. And we were very proud to host.
Wonderful, thank you. Anything else? Okay, just a reminder, we have no meeting next Monday because of this President's Day. So our next meeting will be on Monday, February 26th. We do not have any executive session this evening. A quick sending out some good vibes to the boys, Liberty Boys basketball team playing at the PPL Center right now. Let's go kick some butt. And girls are tomorrow night, so support. And why don't we all adjourn so we can go home and wait for maybe a snow phone call? Just throwing it out there. Do we have a motion to adjourn? There you go. Thank you.